So, we're going to be talking about chiropractic in athletes. So, who of you knew that B.J. Palmer used to own a radio station? So, B.J. Palmer used to own a radio station, and I knew about that. What I never knew, though, is how important and how big that radio station was. It was just like, yeah, he owned a radio station at some point. Until a couple of months ago, I was in Devonport. So I'm walking in Brady Street, which is the street where Palmer is. And you see a Palmer building and another Palmer building. And then in the middle of the Palmer buildings, surrounded by those buildings, you see this one broadcasting center, which looks like this. And so at the time, I'm saying like, oh, I wonder if this broadcasting center at this location has anything to do with the fact that B.J. Palmer used to own a radio station at some point. What I didn't know is how big that was. So B.J. bought that radio station, I don't know the exact date, around 1920. And it was one of the first radio stations that there was in the United States. And everyone, or a lot of people in the United States listened to this radio station, including US presidents. So one of the funny stories that they kind of didn't want to tell, but then I got, like, by asking a lot of questions, I got that story out of them, and I love telling it, so I'm telling it to you guys. Is BJ, the family used to have a dog. It was a Bernard's dog or something. His name was Big Ben. And one day, Big Ben passed away. And so they put Big Ben, the body of Big Ben, under the piano. So from the house of BJ and Mabel, there was a lot of broadcasting, right? So there is this woman that is playing piano, which is being broadcasted on the radio all over the United States. And so she's playing piano on a Sunday afternoon, and at some point, she sees the dog under the piano. So she goes like, oh, he's dead. And then at that moment, the broadcasting is being cut off. So all over the United States, people are thinking BJ is dead, right? So people at the time sent all these letters. So there were letters coming in, but like hundreds and hundreds of letters coming in because people thought that BJ had passed away. And so those letters, if you're ever there, you have to make sure that you're going into the residence of BJ and Mabel, where they used to live for about 40 years. And so then you go into the library, so it's a library room, right? Like books all around. And then there's one bookshelf from left to right, which has orange folders, and they are completely full with those letters that were sent because people thought that BJ passed away. And so they looked at all those letters, and there were even letters in there that came from France. So up until that moment, they didn't even really know or realize how far the radio station would get. But after that, they knew that there were even people from Europe listening to the radio station. So obviously at that radio station, they did a lot of health talks and a lot of talking about chiropractic, which is one of the main reasons that chiropractic at the time became so big. So what we're going to talk about today, though, is chiropractic in athletes. So I studied physiotherapy first, and I have always liked to be around athletes. I used to play sports on quite a high level myself. I love watching sports, I love playing sports. So when I was studying physiotherapy, I thought that was what I was going to do. I was going to get into physiotherapy for elite athletes. But then before I got to that point, I wanted to study chiropractic instead. But that interest in athletes has always stayed. The problem, though, was when I got into chiropractic is I wanted to do chiropractic in the sense of like locating, analyzing, and correcting vertebral subluxations. That's what I wanted to do. And what I found out is that when I was going into like that for athletes, it was all about treating injuries. And I was like, well, that was physio. That's what I chose not to do, right? So first of all, a professional sports team usually has a whole team of a whole medical team. And so they have a physician, a physiotherapist, a rehab trainer. And so has anyone ever heard the safety pin example of chiropractic? Right, everyone has heard it, right? So you have the brain controls every cell in your body. And so what all the others are doing is focusing on the tissue, the cell. How can we recover that tissue? As chiropractor, you're the only one that is focusing on the supply, the nerve supply towards the cell. So when you want to do chiropractic in athletes, you should make sure very quickly that that whole team understands like, oh, I'm not here to do anything that you're doing. Like whatever you're doing is you should keep doing. I'm not here to replace you. The only thing I want to do is add that we're going to look at the nerve supply towards that tissue. Make sense? So when you wonder, are there athletes that want to have a like, do they want chiropractic? I don't know, you know, they don't talk about, I want a chiropractor. Well, I'll tell you, this is Robin van Persie. He was, until a couple of weeks ago, the top scorer of the Netherlands Dutch football team. And so at some point he had an injury in his hamstring. And then multiple football players at the time, including him, would go to this like Serbian doctor. And what she would do is she would massage the leg with the juice of a horse placenta. Because the story went around that would help recover that hamstring quicker. And he was not the only one. There's multiple football players that went to that Serbian doctor. So if they would go to a Serbian doctor that is going to massage their hamstring with the juice of a horse placenta, do you think they might be interested when you explain what chiropractic does? They might be interested in chiropractic. Another example, this is in Dutch, but I'll translate it to you. Ice skaters in the Netherlands without asthma would get asthma medication from a pulmonary doctor. Why would they want to do that? Because it would, like the story goes, it would increase their performance. So I had a little ChatGPT search. What are the side effects of this medication? So they're willing to risk all this to get a little bit better performance when they're on that ice, right? Next one. Ice skaters and rowers are using thyroid medication, again, to increase their performance with all of these side effects that they're willing to risk. So again, if you explain properly what chiropractic can do for the performance of an athlete with the little or basically none side effects that there may be, do you think they would be interested in this? So let's go through a little bit of history. There's actually, I was surprised by this, but there's actually very, very little written and known about chiropractic in athletes in the whole of the history. The first thing that is written down is that the New York Yankees used to have a chiropractor for quite a while. By one of he was one of the physical trainers, Earle Painter, so he would adjust all those players. What you find afterwards is that Dr. Herb Reaver, you may have heard about him as the most jailed chiropractor. That's what he's known for. He used to adjust the black baseball players in the Negro League in Florida. Then the next thing in 1976 was Dr. Leroy Perry, which is the first known chiropractor that was at the Olympic Games. He was the doctor of Antigua, and it was very sports medicine oriented. Then Dr. John Goodhart, first chiropractor at the Olympic Games for the United States. He was doing AK technique, so I would say more subluxation based. Then in 1987, the FIX was founded. I don't know if everyone has ever heard about the FIX, but the FIX is the International Organization for Sports Chiropractic. If you want to get, they're still around, right? They're still the authority on sports chiropractic. If you want to get certified by them, you do a weekend of learning how to treat lower extremity injuries, a weekend of learning how to treat upper extremity injuries, and then you do a whole other bunch of weekends that are all about, and home studies and everything that are all about treating injuries. Do you think subluxation is mentioned a single time in the whole of their curriculum? No. Then, between 2000 to 2010, chiropractic gained presence at the Olympics. You saw more and more chiropractors there. Between 2002, and I'm going to get back to this later, and 2010, there was this Belgian chiropractor, Jean-Pierre Meerseman, who was the chiropractor of AC Milan. And he set something up that is called the AC Milan Lab, which that's very interesting. I'll get back to that. He did AK technique. And after that, at 2010 was the first time that chiropractic was officially a part of the medical center of the Olympic Games. And I'll tell you, that is not a flex. Because what is this medical center at the Olympic Games? Imagine countries like Germany and the Netherlands, they have enough players, they have enough money, they'll bring their own medical teams, right? So they're not going to be the ones that are going to go to that medical center. So who goes to that medical center? It's the smaller countries with less money that may not have the opportunity to bring a medical team. So those players go in there, when do you think? When they have an injury. So they have an injury, they want a treatment that moment, right then, right there, one time. So as a chiropractor in that medical center, you're going to be sort of like, you're going to be fighting with the physio over who is going to see that athlete that one time. What do you think that is helping? First of all, do you think those chiropractors are seeing them to locate, analyze, and correct their vertebral subluxation? No. What is it going to help if they're going to see a chiropractor that one time there in the place where the Olympic Games are? Not really. So the green ones are the ones where I would say there was at least some correcting of vertebral subluxation. And the red ones, that is purely like medical, right? Sports science, injury treatment. These, I'm just gonna, I already explained them a little bit. So here we have, who knows this guy? This doctor on the left is Dr. Brett Glowacki. And I can tell you one thing that he's incredibly good in, an absolute master in communication. So he sees a lot of people in his practice, and he also sees a lot of athletes. So what does he do? He explains very well how it would increase their performance. So he is not one of these chiropractors that is going to voluntarily go to the Olympic Games in the medical center after he's been chosen because he had to do like a whole application process with the fix. No, he is seeing these athletes in his practice, then they go to Paris, he flies after them, he sees them there at the pitch as a part of their continuing care, and then he's gonna enjoy and watch the game. So if you ever wanna go into sports chiropractic, my suggestion would be like Brett. So we're gonna do a little game here, or a little quiz. So I think how good your chiropractor or how good you as a chiropractor are in communicating what we do will reflect on what your practice members will say what you do or what chiropractic is, right? So there's a lot of, no, not that much actually. There are some elite athletes that used to say something about chiropractic. So we're gonna look at what they said, and then we're gonna see how aligned that is with what we think we do, okay? So the first one, my chiropractor really helped me. Not only did he adjust my spine, he also gave me strengthening exercises to do. It's as important to my game as practicing my swing. Who do we think said this? Tiger Woods. And so I asked ChatGPT, how aligned do you think this is with straight chiropractic? And with straight chiropractic, I mean, did he locate, analyze, and correct vertebral subluxation? So ChatGPT gave him a 6. 6 out of 10. Next one, chiropractic just makes you feel so much better. I feel like I'm taller and everything is in place. As long as I see the chiropractor, I feel like I'm one step ahead of the game. Who knows who said this? Tom Brady. He got a 9. That's okay, that's pretty good, right? This looks like what I would like the players to say. I didn't know how much I could improve until I started seeing a chiropractor. Since I've been in chiropractic, I've improved by leaps and bounds, both mentally and physically. This was Michael Jordan. ChatGPT gave him a 10 out of 10. Bodybuilders and fitness people have been using chiropractic very extensively. I found it was better to go to a chiropractor before you get injured. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he got a 9. Chiropractic solved my neck and shoulder pains. It put me back on my feet. I think chiropractic is great. Usain Bolt, a 5. Mwah. Chiropractic gives me flexibility, the flexibility I need to keep in the game. Venus Williams, she also gets a 5. So Michael Jordan is the winner. He got a 10 out of 10. And so one thing you may have seen from this, or at least that was apparent to me, is these people are all old by now. Like they're in their, like around their 50s, I guess. None of them are... For an elite athlete, come on. They're old for an elite athlete. They're past their time. And they're all American. So what I'm missing is younger players that still are active in sports and potentially also, or preferably also from Europe, right? So the conclusion is chiropractic in athletes is underdeveloped and from what it is developed, you can wonder, is it chiropractic? Or with other words, is it the location and analysis and correction of vertebral subluxation? By the way, there is a reason I'm saying chiropractic in athletes. Because when you say sports chiropractic, I think that implies that it's a different type of chiropractic. But that is not what it is, and that is one thing I learned. It's like chiropractic in athletes is the exact same thing as what I would do with the baby, or with the grandma, or doesn't matter who comes into my practice. The only thing is I'm doing it with athletes instead. Now we're going to dive into the philosophy of this. So whoever you see in your practice, this I think is what we're doing. We're trying to get them, or to help them get the best optimal expression of life, which you get from having 100% intelligence, which you always have, and optimal matter and optimal force. And that optimal expression of life in your body is going to give you optimal health. This is what we want to do with the people that are coming into our practice. When you see an athlete, though, you will also want them to have optimal expression of life, so they have optimal performance. You want them to have optimal expression of life, so they have optimal recovery. And you want them to have optimal expression of life, so they might prevent some injuries that they otherwise would have. Make sense? These are principles 2 to 5. So then innate intelligence. Innate intelligence is in every living thing. It's always at 100%. It's in every living thing and it's always at 100%. And what it will do, it's always trying to keep you in active organization. What if you're not in active organization? You're in passive organization. That means you're dead. So what does that mean? It's trying to keep you in active organization. It means it's trying to keep you alive, right? That's what innate intelligence does. In an animal body, so not a living thing, but in an animal body, that innate intelligence travels over the nervous system and it can be interfered with. And that is either directly or indirectly because of a subluxation. Principles 28 to 31. And so this is what we can agree with on everyone, right? Doesn't matter who comes into a practice, doesn't matter whether it's an athlete, they all have innate intelligence and they can have subluxations, correct? So then let's dive into those 3 things that I mentioned: optimal performance, optimal recovery, and injury prevention. So let's say Usain Bolt is on the starting line, Olympic Games final, 100-meter sprint, and there's about 1 trillion processes every second in his body. Do you think he would benefit from all those trillion processes in his body to function optimally, to be coordinated optimally? Of course he would. So, principle 32, coordination is the law of harmonious action of all the parts of the body in fulfilling their offices and purposes. So in this case, offices and purposes is what he wants to do is sprint that 100 meters as quick as he can, right? And do you think harmonious actions of all the parts of his body will be beneficial? Of course. Principle 23, the function of innate intelligence is to adapt universal forces and matter for use in the body. So universal forces would be gravity, right, which is going to pull him down. The reaction force, which is going to push him back up. The wind that might blow from the side. The oxygen that he's going to breathe in, that his body needs to change. The fuel that he had before the game, that he will, or the food that he had that he will have to transfer into fuel for his muscles. Those are all universal forces that his body is adapting for use in the body. Make sense? So that all the parts of the body will have coordinated action for mutual benefit. So again, do you think that chiropractic would help to get an athlete's optimal performance? Of course it would. Optimal recovery. So optimal recovery, by the way, this is measured very often in sports as in the amount of lost training days that they might have. So obviously, if you recover quick from a training, then you can train again. So let's say the Olympic Games is next year. We have 350 days before it is. So do you think it would benefit if I recover quicker so I can have 250 trainings as opposed to I recover slower and I might only have 150 trainings? Who do you think will win that Olympic Games? Make sense? So optimal recovery. The mission of innate intelligence is to maintain the material of the body in active organization. So let's say Usain Bolt is having a strength training. He's doing like proper squats, and so he gets micro ruptures into his quadriceps, right? Like muscle soreness. Do you think that when innate intelligence recognizes that there is micro ruptures in his muscles and sending the messages to recover, do you think that would help his recovery? Of course, because innate intelligence is keeping it alive, and when there's ruptures, then it needs to heal those ruptures so it's staying alive. Principle 33, the law of demand and supply is existent in the body in its ideal state. So those muscles send messages up to the brain. The brain, innate intelligence, recognizes there is a demand for certain fuel, for probably an inflammatory response to recover those micro ruptures. And so innate intelligence will supply what is needed because the law of demand and supply is existent in its ideal state. Make sense? Then the second half of principle 33, wherein the clearinghouse is the brain, innate the virtuous banker, brain cells, clerks, and nerve cells, messengers. When I read this for the first time, I was like, was Stevenson's high when he wrote this? Like, what on earth is happening? But then I realized, I don't know banks nowadays that work like this, except for one, which that's the only picture I can make with this principle, the bank of Harry Potter. Like this guy, like if they would be called clerks, I would be like, oh yeah, I guess it can be a clerk. I don't know what a clerk means in English, I don't know. So, but let's break it down. Innate intelligence is the banker, meaning innate intelligence knows exactly what's going on with all the different bank accounts. So innate intelligence is controlling how they need to stay balanced, right? Then the brain is the clearinghouse, so that processes all the transactions. The brain cells are the clerks, so they would record, calculate, and interpret all the information. And nerve cells are the messengers, so they carry the receipts and the checks around in the bank. This is the best I can make out of this. So now it should make sense now though. The law of demand and supply is existent in the body in its ideal state, wherein the clearinghouse is the brain, innate the virtuous banker, and brain cells the clerks, and nerve cells the messengers. Okay? And then optimal recovery, also the principle of time. I spoke about it a little bit. Obviously, there is no process that does not require time. And so if you do a training and innate intelligence is able to keep the body in active organization, and it can make sure that the law of demand is that everything is that is demanded from the tissue is being supplied, there's no interference with that process, does it make sense that your recovery would be quicker and better? Yeah? The last one, injury prevention. I actually added this one later. It didn't get to me immediately. But then last weekend, so I support PSV, the football club in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And so last weekend I was watching, and then Ruben van Bommel, the son of Mark van Bommel, who played for Bayern Munich, he's the most talented player we have at PSV right now. And so he is chasing an opponent, and then the opponent is there's no one around, he puts his foot down and his knee just went. He just goes through his knee, no one around, no contact. It didn't really look very weird what he was doing, but then it just went. So as someone that ruptured her ACL 2 times, and like I saw it and I was like immediately, oh God, he's out for a year. And so that got me thinking, it was such a normal movement. Like I understand if in rugby or in football, like someone comes in very, like in Dutch we say lomp, very not being careful. So someone comes in, I understand you're like that can make sure that an ACL would snap, right? But then nothing happened. So principle 24, the limits of adaptation. Innate intelligence adapts forces and matter for the body as long as it can do so without breaking a universal law. Well, obviously, or whatever happened, the forces on that ACL were stronger than the ACL. That's why it would snap, right? But what was clear is that his body didn't really brace in time. His leg didn't really brace so that the forces on that ACL wouldn't become so big. So is it possible that he was subluxated so that the firing of the muscles would be slower, the coordination would not be as accurate, so when he put his foot down, his muscles and his stabilizing system around it wouldn't be able to brace so that ACL would snap? Not every force can obviously be be avoided by innate intelligence. There will be a point, even if you're unsubluxated, where you will get injured. But when you are subluxated, this is where you would get injured, subluxated or non-subluxated. But then there is this area where you would get injured if you're subluxated, but not if you wouldn't. Make sense? Or innate intelligence is limited by the limitations of matter, where I just imagine if I train for powerlifting for a year and I'm doing a squat with 100 kilos, I'm prepared for that, right? So my matter is prepared for this load. And then if my twin sister didn't train for this, but is also doing that squat with 100 kilo, does it make sense that her matter is not prepared to take this universal force? So that gives me a little summary. So performance is coordinated expression that goes through the nervous system, and interference limits the time and the precision of this. Injury prevention, adaptation has limits, tissues are finite. Subluxations lowers the threshold, so you would have earlier failure. And recovery, demand and supply must match. Innate intelligence restores the organization, and a subluxation lowers the quality and or the speed of recovery. That makes chiropractic and athletes a performance and recovery and injury prevention as a manifestation of coordinated function, governed by innate intelligence, obviously, and limited by subluxation. This is an article that you can find easily about the AC Milan lab. So Jean-Pierre Meersman opened this. He was good friends with the coach at the time, Carlo Ancelotti. And so he opened this, and what happened is that those players would get adjusted every week, or at least checked every week and adjusted if necessary. And they did some testing. They did AK technique, so they do muscle testing before. And so based on muscle testing and a couple of other tests, they would give the players either a green, an orange, or a red before the game. Green is, you're good to play. Red is, you're not good to play. And orange would be one of those people, like you would go into conversation with the coach, how much necessary is it that he would play? So this is known as the system that extended players' career, because they had a team, including David Beckham, that was all like 30 plus years of, or a lot of them were 30 plus years of age, 35, 36, and still in the prime of their sports. So what happened is they had a 43% decrease in lost training days, 70% decrease in medication use amongst the players, 66% decrease in amount of injuries. And they had an all-star team of 30 plus year of age players. So this is a photo of a player of PSV, and the guy on the right is the head of the medical team. And so this year, again, they have a lot of injuries. Last year, they also had a lot of injuries. And it was around this time, actually, September, October, that I decided, you know what, I'm just going to send the guy an email. So I sent an email to that guy on the right. My sister happens to work in the same hospital. So a bit illegally, I got his email address. And I just sent him an email. I was like, hey, I'm Naomi, I'm a chiropractor in Veldhoven, and I support PSV. And I think that the players I think PSV would really benefit from having chiropractic in their medical team. It would not be anything in place of anything you already have. I would love to elaborate on this in a personal conversation. And he was actually very open. He sent a message back, hey Naomi, thanks for your enthusiasm. I would love to hear what you have to say. So I went to PSV, to their training ground, and had a meeting with him. And so at that time I thought, it has to be as scientific as possible, because that's the language he speaks. So I read the reality check a million times. I knew it from start to finish. I read a lot of articles. I emailed Jenna, who is in the research center in New Zealand. I was like, I have to be prepared. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation. And so there I am, and I'm going through all what I have to say. So I decided to go from the perspective of the disafferentation model. Disafferentation model meaning if a vertebrae is out of place, it sends the wrong afferent messages to the brain, and you get like a garbage in, garbage out idea. Wrong messages to the brain means wrong messages back, which it's not untrue, but that is fully what I went for. And so we're at, I finish, and he is like, okay. But we have an ortho manual doctor, which is a medical doctor that does SMT, manipulative therapy. And so the ortho manual doctor, he's like, yeah, he says the same thing. So what really is the difference? And so now I'm having to recover, right? I'm like, oh, nervous system, I'm trying what I can. But then that was just before I started the ACP program. The ACP program is the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers. And so after that, we dive like deep into the philosophy and I start to understand what I just explained to you guys. And so that meeting was over. He waited 2 months, and 2 months later he emails me and he says, well, thank you so much for coming and for your enthusiasm. We loved what you had to say. We don't want to get you like fully on board seeing every player weekly, because that's what I suggested, but we would like to have you on like a consultant basis, which I think that was just a polite way to say like, nah. Because we're a year later, yesterday their third striker got injured, so they're now out of strikers. They have so many injuries, but he still didn't call me. So knowing what I know now, if I had that conversation again, I would not try to talk their language. I would not try to talk science. I would explain exactly to him what I explained to you right now. And I think the chances would be pretty big with that many injured players that I would be weekly checking their players if I would have done that. So what now? How to get more straight chiropractors into elite sports. I think it's important that we understand what we do. So the presentation today, I think, is a good start. But if you really want to know and to be certain about what you do, I suggest you're going to be looking into the ACP program, which is 5 weekends. The Sherman College comes to Europe to do it here. 4 weekends are in Europe, and 1 weekend is the Sherman Lyceum in the States. Then once you understand it well, you need to learn how to communicate it well, just like Brett Glowacki does, right? And then we can do that 1 athlete and 1 student at a time. And then back to my first question, chiropractic and athletes, can that be a new WOC? Meaning, this was the radio station, right? So meaning it can be something that really, really shifts and increases what people in the world know about chiropractic and understand about chiropractic. I think so. If every elite player that we have, like Musiala, Wirtz, Erling Haaland, Lamine Yamal, if they would all be talking about chiropractic and how that improves their performance, their recovery, and gets them less injuries, then I think it can really help chiropractic. I thought maybe you might be interested in reading my ACP paper once it's done. The first hand-in date is in 2 weeks, but the last one end of November. So after end of November, if you scan this QR code, you can tick a box that you would like to read my ACP paper. So if you do that, I'll send it to you. You can also tick a box if you want to know when the ACP in Europe is starting again. We're finishing in January, and I'm guessing that Sherman close after is going to try to find new dates to do it. And if you want, you can also let me know if you want this PowerPoint so you can have a read through. Then one last thing. We talked about sports chiropractic. I heard Diederik say, what even is that, right? I hope I answered that today. But I know one person in this room that's really worked as a sports chiropractor, and he taped and worked together with the physio on the team. So even if you think that right now, a couple of years later, he's on stage. So that was Diederik when he graduated. He did that in Norway. So you can recover from that, and you can check athletes for subluxations if you want to. And I hope you learned a lot from this presentation. Thank you.